Clay Thomas.
Here.
Christina Hill.
Here.
Lee Lawrence.
Here.
Brad Stanley. Brad Stanley.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. If we'll all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Large, ethics law announcement, please.
Board members are reminded that if with respect to any matter or any person coming before the board today, you have received a gift or a loan, you have a pecuniary interest, you have a commitment in a private capacity such as a family, employment, business, or similar relationship, or you provide a representation or counseling before an agency or to a person or entity for compensation within the last year on a matter being considered, you must disclose that gift, loan, interest, commitment, or prior representation at the time the matter is being considered, and you must furthermore abstain from deliberation or voting on the matter if it is clear that the gift, loan, interest, commitment, or prior representation would materially affect the independence of judgment of a reasonable person. Board members are also reminded that under the Board of Adjustment rules, if you've had contact outside this meeting with any persons interested in a matter coming before the board today, you should disclose the nature of that contact at this meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Large. Appeal procedure, Mr. Lloyd.
Right. Most decisions rendered by the Board of Adjustment are appealable to the Board of County Commissioners. If you disagree with the decision of the Board of Adjustment and you want to appeal its action, you may do so in writing within 10 calendar days from the date the decision being appealed is signed by the Secretary of the Board of Adjustment and mailed to the original applicant in the proceeding being appealed in accordance with Washoe County Code. Please call the planning staff immediately at 328-6100 for information on the appeal procedure and application fee.
Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. Next is general public comment and discussion thereof. Any person is invited to speak on any item on or off the agenda during this period. Action may not be taken on any matter raised during this public comment period until the matter is specifically listed on the agenda as an action item. Madam Secretary, do we have anyone wishing to speak at this time?
We do not.
Thank you. Next item is the possible action to approve the agenda. Before I accept a motion, I would like to make one change in regards that I'd like to move item 9C, which is to consider and adopt a resolution commending Kim Toulouse for his service with Washoe County to be heard right after the draft minutes are done, which would be right after number 7. Is there any further discussion on this from members of the board? Hearing none, I'll go ahead and accept a motion to approve the agenda.
I move.
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. Second? I'll second.
Aye.
All right, thank you, Kim. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Oh, aye.
Mr. Stanley?
Aye.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Next item is possible action to approve the June 4th, 2020 draft minutes. Is there any discussion from the board members on this item? Hearing none, I'll accept the motion.
Move to approve.
Thank you. I'll second that. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Next item up is consider an adoption of resolution commending Kim Toulouse for his service with the Washoe County. Mr. Toulouse, we have an item here that I would like to read and then present to you, not only on behalf of the board, but also on behalf of Washoe County and all the individuals that you have touched in the time that you have been a board member. It is resolution of the Washoe County Board of Adjustment expressing appreciation to Kim Toulouse for his service to Washoe County. Whereas Board Member Toulouse, since his appointment by the Washoe County Commissioners on October 13th, 2009, has been an active and interested member of the Washoe County Board of Adjustment, serving the county with distinction and dedication. Whereas Board Member Toulouse was reappointed by the Washoe County Commissioners for his first full term on the Washoe County Board of Adjustment on May 15th, 2012, and a second full term on April 26th, 2016. Whereas Board Member Toulouse always demonstrated professionalism and considerable knowledge of planning and development in Washoe County. Whereas Board Member Toulouse demonstrated an exceptional awareness and care of impact to our community. Whereas Board Member Toulouse offered exceptional knowledge of all aspects of the flora and fauna and the unique ecosystems of the high desert environment of northern Nevada. Whereas Board Member Toulouse always provided well-reasoned and thoughtful input to complex discussions. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Washoe County Board of Adjustment does hereby express their deep appreciation to Kim for his extraordinary concern and devotion to the improvement of the community's well-being through the development, implementation, and administration of a quality planning in Washoe County. And to be further resolved that the Washoe County Board of Adjustment will miss the contributions of Kim Toulouse and extend our best wishes for a happy and prosperous future. Adopted this August 6th, 2020, signed by Mr. Lloyd and myself. Kim, before you come up and we give you this document, I just want to take a moment to personally say thank you. It was a privilege and an honor to work with you. A lot of things covered within here were true and accurate as to your professionalism and you asking some of the best questions I've seen up here and digging for the truth on those answers. I followed you after you were chair and watched you work from this position as the board and learned a lot from you in that. So thank you. It's been a pleasure.
I'd like to second that. Thank you, Kim. It's been a real pleasure. You and I have seen a lot of things eye to eye. A few things you were right about and I was, but we'll forget about those. And but no, you've been a wonderful mentor to me coming into this board, giving me a lot of insight into things that I needed to pay attention to, such as the noxious weed issue we talked about the very last time you were here. And I see it's included in this document that we're looking at today. And I appreciate all the support you've given me in this community and the input you've had. Thank you.
Is there anything else from any other members or from Washoe County?
This is Brad Stanley. Again, I would like to echo everybody's remarks and say that personally I very much enjoyed and respected my time working with Mr. Toulouse on his exceptionally long tour of duty serving the county. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stanley.
I would like to also say that I want to congratulate Kim on his excellent service to the community and the county, and very much appreciated his input whenever we had discussions about projects, and wish him well in the future. Thank you, Kim, for your service.
Mr. Lloyd.
Yeah, Kim, as I'm speaking for all of staff, we have the obligation of filling your role, and I want you to know those are some very big shoes we have to fill, and it's not going to be easy to replace you and everything that you brought to this board. You just bring an incredible wealth of knowledge of all things planning and land use. Besides that, you are also very respectful of staff, of the public, of everyone you came in contact with. You're going to be missed very much by all of staff. Thank you.
Mr. Toulouse, is there anything you'd like to, oops, I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman, let me
Mr.
just
Clark.
say, just on behalf of the Washoe County District Attorney's Office, and I just would like to echo the sentiments of all of my colleagues up here that are sitting here, and thank Mr. Toulouse. I just came onto this board a couple of years ago, but I learned a lot from you in regard to the way you came prepared every day, every issue, and the thoroughness in which you were prepared is really a testament to your dedication. You know, our board members don't get They don't do this for the money, and they don't do this for the prestige. They do this because they're committed to making their community better. And what you've done for the last 11 years serving on this board really shows a real dedication to Washoe County and making sure that this community is in the best hands possible. And with that, I mean, I think we are going to greatly miss your input.
Thank you, Mr. Large. Mr. Toulouse, would you like to come to the podium and on the opposite side and talk just a minute?
Comment for this?
Yes. Hang on one second.
Well, is this on? Yep, it's on. I forget the little red lights. I've only been gone a month, and you forget these things. I appreciate all the accolades, and it's been my pleasure to serve on this board for a long, long time, and I will miss the folks on the board, and especially the staff. I don't think there's a more professional, better prepared staff anywhere than what we have here in Washoe County. Trevor, your department is absolutely outstanding. Didn't always agree with everything, but that's the job of this board is to weigh those applications carefully, and I commend all of you for continuing to serve on the board. Again, thank you for the accolades. I appreciate it, and I will miss you. I will not miss that little packet I get every month or so from Donna. So I have less reading professionally and more reading time for pleasure. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Let me present you with this. Donna, do you have anything?
Did you want to talk?
All right, well, we don't want to keep you from fishing. We noticed that you also brought your family with you, and we just want to acknowledge them. Thank you for coming down, and I'll tell you, he's a good one. He's a good man to have.
Julie Olander, did you want to speak?
Yeah, this is Julie Olander. I just wanted to thank Kim for all his information he always gave at meetings, and I really appreciated having the opportunity to serve Washoe County, and I enjoy working at Washoe County, and then also have him as a board member. So thank you, Kim. I really enjoyed working with you.
Thanks, Julie. I always enjoyed your presentations. You were awesome and still are awesome. So I encourage you.
Thank you.
Keep
Well,
up
good
the
luck.
work.
I wish you the very best, and I think you're a great example of what we as citizens need to be doing in this community. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks, Kim.
Have a great meeting.
Enjoy your time off.
I will, thank you. Send me some fish pictures.
Bye, everybody.
Take it easy.
Okay. You will definitely be missed. Moving on. Public hearing. First item on the agenda is special use permit case number WSUP 19-0027, Ash Ranch. And who will be speaking on that? I believe Dan.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Disclosures on this?
Yes, any disclosures, please?
Yes, I have a disclosure to make. The applicant in the Ash Ranch, Jeannie Ash, is my very good neighbor and friend, and also client to my company, of which I actually had to sign a document, or I didn't have to do anything, in support of her presentation or application, is the word I'm looking for today. So I have to recuse myself completely from this meeting. As of course I have, she is my neighbor, and she is a client of ours, and I've known her for 4 or 5 years, and it's, I have to recuse myself. Okay, so I will gather my things.
Yes, if you want to wait outside, we will call you back in. when we are-
Okay, I have
we are
my
done with this
mask
one.
and what I need. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other disclosures? Hearing none, I believe Mr. Kalan, I might pronounce that wrong, but you're up, sir.
Well, Dan Colon for the record. I'm pulling my screen up now, so give me a second. And you did pronounce it correctly. All right. So I have before you today WSUP 19-0027 Ash Ranch Grading and Stables. The applicant is coming in for a request to approve major grading to legalize 2.03 acres of grading for equestrian trails, the establishment of a commercial stables use type, and request to vary parking, landscaping, and grading standards. Here's the vicinity map. You can see that it is east of the intersection of Alamosa Drive and Pyramid Highway. And here's the site plan. The area outlined in the red dotted line is considered to be outside of the commercial stables SUP. This will become more clear and important as we go through this presentation. So starting with the grading, the applicant graded approximately 2.03 acres of trails without a permit. As you can see in the image on the right, the green area is the approximate location of the unpermitted grading. This traverses a steep hillside. The applicant is requesting to vary the grading standards for this trail. So as you can see here, these are images of some of the areas of grading. They're quite dimly lit, unfortunately, as I took these in December and it was late in the day, so I apologize for the poor quality of my photography. Here's the slope map for the site. As you can see, everything that is in blue are the areas that are less than 15% slope. Everything that is in green and red are areas that are more than 15% slope. This is important when looking at the trails. The slopes outlined are too great for a road or driveway, as they are generally greater than 14%. This is too steep for fire access or to be considered a driveway within the county code. Therefore, we're looking at this grading as a trail as opposed to a driveway or access road. Here is the grading and slope plans. This area shows the areas where the slopes are corresponding to the grading table. I want to just point out that slope number 13 is considered to have potential for erosion as opposed to the rest of the slopes, which are generally speaking stable cuts into the ground. Here are the grading profiles. As you can see, they are a number of cuts and fills that have occurred already. So therefore, we've looked at the grading analysis and we are recommending that the grading conform with the requirements in Washoe County Code 110-438-45, which is summarized in this table below, outside of the conditioned trail areas. Within the trail, we are conditioning the trail to have the following standards. First, no AC paving or more than 3 inches of aggregate base are allowed on this trail. And we are outlining that the trail follows specific standards depending on its slope. For slopes between 5 and 8%, the maximum trail width allowed will be between 6 and 12 feet. And slopes greater than 8% will have a maximum trail width of 3 feet. Now moving on to the commercial stables, the applicant is proposing to board 10 horses with 3 monthly guided tours. They are designating specific areas of the property for this commercial use, as stated earlier. And just to clarify, this property is large enough to board all of these horses, as Article 330 allows for an unlimited number of livestock on parcels greater than 35,000 square feet. This parcel is 67 acres, so it is by far in excess of 35,000 square feet. So here are the proposed conditions for the stables. Staff is recommending that there be no more than 4 stable events per month with no more than 25 people at each of these events. Commercial stable uses are prohibited outside of the delineated area. So everywhere that outside of the delineated area are the areas that are in the yellow polygon on the bottom left-hand side, as well as providing obstruction requirements for the trail access in the bottom right-hand image, where all of the red rectangles are areas that are required to have obstructions for staff recommendations. Parking. The applicant is requesting to vary the parking standards to not require pavement outside of the handicap spaces. Staff does support to vary the standard. This use requires 5 spaces, and the applicant is providing 7 spaces. I just wanted to make it very clear that the reason why the applicant is looking to vary the pavement on this standard is to ensure the safety of the horses. Therefore, staff and the applicant felt that it was the best compromise in order to provide paved surfacing for ADA compliant spaces. Moving on to landscaping, the applicant is requesting to reduce the landscaping standards as the landscaping does not match the surrounding high desert. Staff broadly agrees with this request, however, has a minor disagreement over the amount of landscaping that should be required. As you can see in the image below, the red dotted line is the area that staff is recommending landscaping standards apply to. So that means that instead of it being to the edge of the indoor riding arena, staff is recommending that it extends all the way out to the red star, which is approximately 400 feet away from the corner, the eastern boundary line from Alamosa Drive. So 400 feet from Alamosa Drive along that eastern property line. And then staff is recommending that all other areas on the property be exempted, as code would require landscaping along the entirety of the eastern and northern property lines. Public notice. This notice was sent to 39 affected property owners, 2,500 feet from the site. And it was heard at the Spanish Springs Advisory Board on June 10th, where there were a number of concerns brought up, including wildfire and fire access, continued use of the trails, bathroom availability, lighting, and potential private damages from this use type. However, staff is able to make all 5 of the required special permit findings and recommends that the board approve the requested special use permit with the attached conditions of approval. And I have provided a motion for your convenience, and I am available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff?
This is Brad Stanley. I have one question for Mr. Kelly. On the landscaping, is what you described a net reduction in the requirement, the standards for landscaping?
Yes, I've rewound my presentation to the landscaping slide. The image on the lower left-hand corner shows the approximate locations of both the indoor riding arena as well as the eastern property, the house for the eastern property. This will result in a net reduction in landscaping standards. We're just proposing slightly more landscaping than the applicant requested in order to mitigate the visual impact of the commercial stables use for the eastern property.
And to clarify that, to mitigate the view shed for the neighbors, is that the intent?
That was the intent, correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Klon, just on that same topic, this is the landscaping that will be on the east side of the property. They originally wanted 275 feet, and you have recommended 400 feet. Would that 400
Yes.
feet take it to the, can't quite make it out, but it's the arena area? Is that, would it go back about that far? Because I can see where the star is, or does that star represent your recommendation?
That recommends my recommendation. So the existing arena area is further up the hill and less visible to neighbors. This is approximately where there's a slight drainage right before there.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Are there any more questions for staff? Hearing none, thank you very much for your presentation. If you'll stand by, though, when we get into this a little bit further, I might have a couple more questions for you, but thank you.
I will be on standby, and I will yield my screen share for the applicant.
Thank you. Is the applicant present and wish to speak on this item?
Yes, I am. Thank you. Everyone can hear me, I assume?
Yes, if you'd state your name for us, please.
Sure. Derek Wilson with Rubicon Design Group on behalf of the applicant. And I will hit a share screen. Okay. Dan did a great job. I got to say, this is probably the most thorough staff report I've ever read in my long professional history, so I appreciate that. I will do my best to keep this quick and not try to repeat too much material. So a fairly large property east of Pyramid Way, northern edge of Spanish Springs area, 68 acres, so plenty of room to include these activities without crowding the site or the neighbors. Zone general rural, so we're in compliance with the zoning. Purpose, as Dan stated, is to establish a commercial stable for a maximum of 10 horses and bring the site into grading conformance. Well, I guess the first point, this is not going to be a rodeo event site. It's not going to be a party site. It's for the stabling of a few horses. So it won't be horse trailers and events and loudspeakers or any of that. We'll get into the grading quite a bit, but there's a long history of grading on this, a lot of it predating the current owner, and I'll explain that in detail as we go. Commercial stable, the buildings are in place. The property is, I would rate it as a very tidy, organized property, modern construction standards, solid fences, riding ring. All these structures, all the major structures were built by previous owners. The horses that are going to be coming on site are primarily retired horses, so older horses that need a safe place to live. Owners will come and visit them occasionally, ride them occasionally if they want, but not aggressive horse training or jumping events or things like that. The events that Dan mentioned are going to be children's groups. The owners are interested in providing opportunities for disadvantaged children to do outdoor activities, horse care, some guided trail rides, things like that. Frankly, I think some of these kids are in for a lot of shoveling that they may not know they're getting into, but they'll have to learn that the hard way. Again, those won't be big rodeos. They're scheduled events with local nonprofit groups. The owners have been in contact with the Eddie House, Boys and Girls Club. So they're looking to provide healthy outdoor activity for disadvantaged groups. The site's already built, the barn, paddock, fencing, drive area is already in place. Here's a site plan. I apologize. It's always difficult to show a big piece of property on an overhead screen. But the commercial stable is only going to occupy a portion of the site, roughly half. Dan covered this, but following the CAB meeting, the team decided to revise the area that's excluded from this commercial permit. So what happened is we heard the input from the neighbors. We think we listened, and we greatly expanded that commercial exclusion area. So this image is rotated 90 degrees. North is to the left, but you can see that black line zigzagging across the middle of the property. North of that line, left of that line is now excluded from this SUP. So that area of the property, that northern area, will only be used by the family. So there'll be essentially no change in status of that northern area. We will, however, do some re-veg back there. There's some grading towards that north end that we're gonna re-veg, in fact, eliminate some of it that we just don't need. So the commercial area, the kid events will be restricted to the southern half of the property. We feel this does two things. Neighbors were concerned that there would be parties and loud events at the north end of the site. That's certainly not our objective, but we feel that this this line, this barrier we're volunteering to provide removes that concern. And it also addresses wildfire. Wildfire is absolutely a concern, and everybody around here needs to be aware of that. So we didn't think we'd be bringing dangerous activities to that northern end, but I can see how neighbors would want to be reassured. So we volunteered this greater exclusion area. So there won't be any commercial activity going north of that line. And in fact, that line follows a grade break, a ridge line essentially of the property. So none of the commercial activities will even be visible to neighbors to the north. So we think that line provides sort of kind of a hard barrier and really removes any hint of any impacts that might have occurred. So this is a better graphic showing the exclusion area. So here I've rotated the image back. So north is now up. That black line is the border of the commercial area. South of that will be the horse stable and trail rides. North of that, just regular family use of the property, no commercial activity. Existing conditions, the driveway was graded several years ago by a previous owner. So I think it was just an informal Jeep trail, or maybe they graded it in partway. I'm not entirely sure what the total history of that is, but it was there when the current owners bought it. And I bring that up not because I'm trying to shift blame. It's property owners' responsibility to manage their own legal issues. We all accept that. But there's an element of I guess naivete on the part of some property owners. We've all made mistakes. They saw that trail and they were using it, and in fact they added some of the grading and they improved some of the slopes. Made it less erosion prone. But unfortunately, they didn't know there was a grading process and an SUP process for that. So we're here to rectify this, and we hope that you agree with us that we're now following the process and that this is an equitable way to proceed. Part of this process is downgrading this driveway, this road, informal road, to a trail. So it'll be narrowed in places where necessary. It'll be limited to 12 feet in width. We felt that 12 feet was necessary to allow for safe children rides, two abreast, an instructor and a kid side by side. And then we'll be remediating any areas that may be prone to erosion or need to be revegetated. Dan mentioned we're varying the grading standards. Yes, but only in that we are seeking to not revegetate the areas that are already bedrock. For one, those areas won't erode. Two, it's difficult to re-veg rock. So areas that need to be re-vegged will get it. Areas that are bedrock and really aren't amenable to re-veg, we prefer to not waste our time and money trying to do that. So that's the only variance to the grading standards that we're seeking. Existing conditions, here's a picture of part of the road. I think Dan did a good job of covering that. Site suitability, the property is very large, can easily contain the operations. Traffic and noise generation will be very low. We're not talking about a lot of cars. The kids will arrive in organized groups. These are disadvantaged kids. They're young kids. They're not going to be driving out there on their own. No new construction is needed. No new building construction is needed. There are some sheds that were built on the property that need to be reduced in size to conform to building permit standards. That's going to happen. That's outside of the SUP process, but I want people to understand that. So we're taking a comprehensive look at cleaning up some of those old buildings, but no new buildings are needed for this project. The use is similar to what other properties in the area have shown or are currently being used as. The intensity, the scale, this type of trail, these are very common for large ranch type properties in Washoe County. So I don't think we're asking for anything that's out of the ordinary. And the SUP would put strict limits on the size of the stable and the number of visitors. Again, they're not looking for a big party site. They're not looking to make a ton of money off events. It's a very small operation. Done some public outreach on this, went to the cab. The owner has been in touch with the neighbors. In fact, has 5 letters of support from surrounding property owners. I think those are in the staff report. There's an additional letter of support from the Eddy House. So they're actively talking to them about kid events, and then today's hearing. And then I have a few more quick points I'd like to make. The varying the parking standard, that's really a danger to horses. We want to limit paved areas. People are familiar with horses, may have seen horses slip and fall on roads, on paved areas. I would like to minimize that risk. So we're not averse to providing good parking. We just don't want a lot of paving area. The landscaping along the east property line, again, the owner is not seeking to avoid doing the work. It's just that hundreds of feet of a linear strip of suburban style landscaping frequently doesn't look good. It doesn't look natural. Rubicon Design Group has discussed this issue on several projects throughout Washoe County over my work history. Had big issues with this in Gerlach a few years ago where people just actively don't want to see it in some areas. So it's not uncommon to try to vary that standard. So again, we're not trying to avoid doing the screening work. We're not trying to avoid making the property look good. We just don't want something that looks unnatural. We'd hate to do a bunch of work and then have the neighbors go, well, why the heck did you do that? It looks weird. So I think the compromise that Dan has worked out with us is probably an effective one. The stable can also perform as an emergency shelter. That's something that can be arranged through, I think this is the local animal welfare, the county animal welfare operation. So assuming this is approved, we would register as a potential emergency shelter. So animals can be taken there, for example, during a wildfire. We did hear claims of illegal grading from, I think it was one or possibly two neighbors at the CAB meeting. Based on the material they gave us, a lot of that seemed to apply to the previous owner. So again, I'm not trying to shift blame. I wouldn't want the current owners to be cast as scofflaws. They made a mistake and they're here to attempt to rectify it. They don't have decades of history of avoiding county permits. They're fairly new owners of this property. It's only been since 2017. From my end, they've been a pleasure to work with, and they've readily agreed to remediation conditions proposed by the county, by planning staff. So I think that they're trying to be good neighbors and trying to make things right here. My final point is a lot of us are land development professionals. We're familiar with the rules. I don't meet a lot of regular people who are familiar with all the rules, so I think it's very easy to make mistakes. It would be sort of normal to see a road on your new property and expect to be able to use it. So certainly the owner regrets the mistake, but they weren't looking to flaunt the rules or to thumb their nose at the process. So I hope we can proceed with that sort of understanding and find a way to make this property legal and make it function well. So that's all I have. I'll be happy to respond as needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Are there any questions for this gentleman?
No?
Okay, I have some from Mr. Wilson. Maybe you can help clarify some points that I have here. As I understand it, you said you're going to have, the stable is going to have 10 horses or be able to house 10 horses. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
And the owner has an additional 3?
Yes.
Someone's underwater or something. I'm sorry, let me repeat the question. The stable will house 10 horses, and the owners have 3 personal horses, is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
And those 3 personal horses, is that included within the 10 that you're asking for, the 10 spots for horses, or is that separate?
That's separate.
Okay, so you'll have at least 13 horses on site?
Well, a maximum of 13.
Maximum of 13, okay. The other question I have is for the parking number is now at 7, but you said you're gonna have 2 full-time employees? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, but in so doing, you're also going to have the owners of the horses that could show up anytime, and sometime in the future, you're also looking at bringing in maybe up to 20 children for an event. So is 7 parking spaces adequate for the amount of potential customers you may have or clients you may have on site?
I feel it is. I went through county code and code supported that number. I'm not sure if Dan has anything to add to that. I could point out we do have the space to squeeze in some more spaces if needed. I personally don't anticipate real dense, visitor loads on this site, but if this were a stumbling block, we could agree to, I think we could probably squeeze in 2 more spaces without a lot of strain.
Yeah, I'm a bit, my concern is, like I said, 7 parking spots, 2 taken up by employees, which leave 5. And then, like I said, you have 10 horses there. And then you also have, like I said, up to maybe 20 children. And I don't know if the children are gonna be bussed in or family members are going to come there for the day if you have an event. So I'm not too sure that 7, actually 5 open spaces would be adequate for what the intent is that you're looking at.
Again, if this was a critical issue for people, I'd be happy to commit to adding 2 more spaces on the site.
Okay. Thank you. Another question I have is bathrooms. If you have 20 children on site, plus the owners of the horse, how many bathrooms are you actually going to have available to the clients that may be there at one time?
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up. I left that out of my presentation by mistake. There are existing bathroom facilities in the barn at the commercial stable area. We're reviewing these right now for ADA compliance, and they'll be they can be expanded to to provide that ADA compliance. I have also a civil engineer, Frank Bedard is on the team as well. I think he's on this meeting. And I'm sorry, Frank, if you're there, can you confirm, are there 2 bathrooms or is there 1? Okay, if Frank's not available, I'm going to say that there's 1 bathroom available in the commercial stable area. Which I think will be sufficient.
Derek, it's Frank Bedard with Odyssey Engineering. Yes, there is that 1 bathroom available.
Yeah.
1 bathroom?
Yeah.
Okay. And that's the one that you will make ADA compliant?
Yes.
That's correct.
The other question I have is on, let's see, on page 6 of our documentation. Well, let me ask you this question first. What are stable-related events? I know that's been bantered around, but what does that actually mean, a stable-related event?
It means that the kids will do I'd say a full range of farm activities, feeding goats, carrying hay bales, caring for horses, probably brushing horses, maybe caring for tack. So I think ancillary activities that go along with taking care of horses and riding horses. So not parties or other rodeos, nothing like that.
Okay. Within the staff report on page 6, it says, the last paragraph says, the application is also proposing to designate areas of the parcel for commercial use and residential use. And this does not include the main residence of the applicant. What is residential use? What does that mean? And I don't know if you can answer that or Dan can answer that, but are you looking at maybe having RVs come onto the site or tents come onto the site for a period of time? Or what is the reference to residential use?
To me, that would cover family activities. There are family members that live on the site. There's a regular residence on the site. It's there now, and there'll be family members living there. So residential activities would include them, going to the northern part of the property, having a family picnic, for instance, but wouldn't, that area that's excluded from the commercial area. So just normal living activities, but no, nothing else is planned as far as commercial operations, or no commercial campground or anything like that.
Okay, so we would not be looking at people bringing RVs on for, overnight or something like that, or tents or anything else into that
No,
type of operation?
Not a party site. No, it's not a commercial campground. No.
Well, not even a commercial campground. I'm just asking is if this is referencing residential use as to bring other type of recreational vehicles on site and set them up.
No, not as an organized activity. No, I mean, if the owner of the house had an RV and parked in their backyard, that would be covered under normal GR zoning activities. But no, there are no plans to have groups of people show up at the site for camping or any other activities.
Okay. I'm almost done here. Now, the other question I have is you addressed the issue of grading. You addressed the issue of the prior owners basically putting in some unauthorized trails or without permit. Is that correct?
Yes. Yep. The rough layout of the trail we're talking about was put in place by a former owner.
And did the current owner then expand on that and
Yes.
widen those areas, or
Yes.
do trail improvement?
They did some improvements. Yeah, they cut in the grading a little deeper in some areas, and they changed a little bit of the alignment of it. Then they added some parts at the very northern end of it. And that northern end of it is an area we're going to heavily revegetate.
And how much did they add on that northern end?
Frank, you want to provide some detail on that?
Yeah, it looks to us like, looking at the past records, there was some grading done there prior, but yeah, the owner did do quite a bit of grading on top of that afterwards, after they purchased this property. I want to say probably, they opened up more, maybe doubled, maybe a little more than doubled that space.
And that was done without seeking the proper permits also, correct?
Correct.
Okay. The other question I have is you're asking about to make a trail that is 12 feet wide. You had talked about that earlier in one of the areas. I can't remember exactly what trail it was.
Mm-hmm.
Is that going to be used just as a horse trail or for some other purpose?
Yeah, horse trail, walking, no cars or trucks.
Derek, I might expand on that. Yeah, they may use an ATV to get back there. The one thing that was requested by Don Combs with the fire department, after conversations with the fire department, is, yeah, granted, this trail is not going to be built to fire standard, but what they did request is if we could leave it, if we could have removable bollards at the entrance to this, so that the range trucks could get back there in case there ever was a fire back there. They thought that would be handy for them. And that, the owner is willing to comply with that. We had those conversations with fire. They thought it was a great idea. So, essentially from the south to that rear property line, we're proposing that 12 foot for two reasons. One, 2 horses side by side. If somebody was actually helping them, that'd be great. Now I'm just talking with, over the crest of the hill, that would be just for the private residents' use, but that was requested by fire.
Okay, yeah, I just found that interesting. I mean, 12 foot wide is basically the width of a lane on a highway. And if it's a horse trail, I found it curious that it would need to be that wide.
Well, 2 horses abreast, and especially if you have somebody helping young children, it's kind of handy.
Okay, I appreciate that. I think that'll do for the questions that I have. Are there any other questions from the board?
This is Brad Stanley. Mr. Chair, I have
Go ahead,
a
Mr.
question
Stanley.
and comment. The comment first, and thank you very much for the transparency on the previous owner's grading, and thank you very much for your candor in saying that the amount of work afterwards had been done. So that's pretty straight shooting. Appreciate it. In terms of the fire access, living in a similar area, certainly seeing wildfires and recent strikes by the thousands, having the ability for a brush truck to make it available. So I would agree with the chair that perhaps 12 people, 2 side-by-side horses might be a little much, but if it's something that supports the fire efforts. Can you though, however, mark a bit or expand a bit on the remediation? And you talked about some revision, but could you go over again some of the remediation on the grading that was done benefit from that? And then secondly, can you let us know if the new owners or women owners became aware that they were not in compliance?
Board Member Stanley? Mr. Stanley? Yeah, one second. I think we're all having a very difficult time understanding you. The connection isn't coming through very clearly.
Okay, let me try it again and I'll summarize.
Can try speaking directly into the microphone too, that might help.
Yeah, I apologize. I mean, I can a lot better. When did the current owner become aware that they were not in compliance from a grading standpoint?
I believe that was 2019.
Was that an ask for a repeat?
I believe they became aware of that towards the end of 2019.
Did we lose Mr. Stanley?
No, he's still on there. It's just his microphone is now muted. He muted his
Okay.
Do we need to tell him to unmute it, or are we done?
I can unmute it. I don't know if he did it on purpose or not.
Mr. Stanley, if you can hear us, evidently you're on, your microphone has been muted.
He's back now. That's what that noise has been. I just turned it on.
Okay, why don't we, as he works through that issue, are there any other questions for Mr. Wilson or his representatives on this item? Ms. Hill?
No.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Wilson, thank you very much. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
Madam Secretary, is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on this item?
Stanley appears to be back. Do you have something you want to say, Brad? Mr. Stanley?
Mr. Stanley, do you have something that you wish to bring forward?
Not at this point, thank you.
Thank you. I guess you can go ahead and mute your speaker or your microphone, thanks. All right, I'm sorry, Madam Secretary, is anyone from the public wishing to speak on this item?
No, we don't have anyone.
Don't have any. Okay. With that, we will go ahead and close public comment and bring it back to the board for discussion. Is there any discussion from the board members?
Well, hi, this is Christina Hill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to say that considering the size of the parcel and the activity that's being proposed, I think it's proportionate and reasonable use. And I think the conditions will mitigate the impacts that were previously occurred from the unlawful grading. And I think it's a good thing that they're coming into compliance.
Thank you, Ms. Hill. Mr. Stanley, do you have anything you wish to add?
I agree.
Okay, thank you. I have a couple concerns. The first one is right off the top would be the number of bathrooms. Currently, there's only one on site for, I don't know exactly what the numbers are going to be, but if you're going to have 20 children on site, and you're going to have possibly 10 horse owners on site, I call into question whether one restroom is would be adequate, especially maybe for the small children that are out there being bounced around on the back of a horse for a period of time. Mr. Wilson, are you willing to add or address that issue? Are you still present?
Yes, I'm still here. I would say that if it proved that there were peak load times, say if, the week that school got out or something, that was a busy week, and the existing bathroom was inadequate, we would agree to have a porta potty brought on site during those peak times. Sure.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And also for the parking, like I said, again, it harkens back to just what I said about the bathrooms, i.e. the number of potential clients there. At the very least, yeah, I believe we should increase that to that 9 parking spots, which would at least allow 7 additional parking spots after the 2 staff, unless the staff can park somewhere else, and you can have a total of 9 for customers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can achieve a total of 9. Yeah, we'll work on that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And the last thing I want to state is, and it happens far too often, as for the time that I've been on this board, is that individuals take it upon themselves to do what they want to their property with no regard to the Washoe County Code. Now, granted, someone else came to the property prior to you and did some illegal grading, but that being said, the owner of this property still took it upon themselves to continue down that path, and in addition to basically double the size on that north side there without getting the proper permits. And you're now being under the watch of the code enforcement to get that taken care of, and also to readjust the size of the buildings that were not your responsibility that were put up. But it just gets back, from my position, of it's always after the fact and then beg for forgiveness, and I don't like that. I'm not in favor of that, and I don't quite know exactly what it's going to take to resolve those issues. But I want to go on record with this item that we're hearing on the board in case something in the future were to ever come up involving that same piece of property or something like that. But I'm not happy. Yeah, I understand it is the owner's property, but it still does not give him exclusive rights to not comply with Washoe County Code. With that being said, is there any further discussion amongst the board members?
Mr. Chair, this is Brad Stanley. Can I be heard now?
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Stanley.
I had asked, pursuant to your point earlier, what remediation efforts had been already done and what were contemplated being done on the grading. And that question, I don't think, came through.
Mr. Wilson, would you like to address Mr. Stanley's questions, please?
Sure. So remediation, the biggest thing is we're going to be reducing some of that area to the north. It was expanded. We can redo that area. The owner agreed that wasn't a great move, and they'd like that cleaned up, so we can reduce that area and then any areas of the trail that are likely prone to erosion are going to be revegetated and stabilized. There's some old trail sections that, we said we realigned the trail slightly. Some of those old sections will be revegetated and essentially removed. I think there's a considerable amount of revegetation and rehabilitation going on. So I hope that answers your question.
It helps. Thank you very much. Mr. Chair, may I also direct this question to Planner Callahan?
Yes.
So there's the opinion. Oh, go ahead.
Yes, quick question, Dan. Is remediation of the trails considered in your conditions, and to the extent that was just explained to us by Mr. Wilson?
So, Dan Colon for the record. Perspective of staff is that all areas that have been graded need to be revegetated within 90 days per 110-438-70 for erosion control. The perspective of staff is that all areas of the trail that are not being revegetated constitute a variance or a request to vary standards in order to make sure that these areas are not going to erode. So we are looking at this from the perspective of everywhere outside of this trail is required to be revegetated. That is the perspective of staff.
Does that answer your question, Mr. Stanley?
Just kind of a follow-up to underscore. Is that stipulated, Dan, in the conditioning?
That is not stipulated, that is code. That's why we stipulated the requirements for the trail so clearly and concisely within that table, and stated specifically that there's no use of base or AC, which would be normally considered to be part of a road and or exempting the area underneath it from grading standards.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd just like to say that, having read the conditions of approval, Mr. Kalan, I think, did a good job of putting that together and really addressing the issues that the board has. So thank you very much for that. With that, are there any more questions from the board? Or any more discussion, I should say, from the board?
No?
Thank you. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll provide a motion, and Mr. Chairman, do you want me to add that addition to the conditions, the applicant will provide a total of 9 parking spaces and porta potties during peak times?
Yes, Ms. Hill, I think that we can add that as a condition in there. You've stated it, so yes, if you read that in, we'll go ahead and accept that. I'm sorry, what? Mr. Kalan, you have something you wish to add?
Dan Klon, for the record again, there was a discrepancy on the basis of where the extent of the special use permit for commercial stables extended to. Staff was provided with a much smaller area than what was presented by the applicant in this presentation. So if you are looking to amend the conditions of approval, staff recommends adding or modifying the extent of the area included in the commercial SUP. So it is larger as opposed to the smaller size that is currently represented in it.
Okay, is there something, the extent of the area under the SUP is larger than what?
So the SUP as drawn, the area that is excluded from the commercial stables facility is smaller in the application as presented by myself, planning staff, as opposed to the applicant's presentation in this hearing today.
I'm happy to clarify that we have an engineering exhibit of that, and we can provide that to the county. It clearly shows that.
Okay, as a point of clarification, is that information within our packet? We don't have the, that adjustment, so we're going off the smaller SUP, is that correct? For area?
Dan Klon, for the record, I believe that is correct.
Okay. And
Mr. Chair?
yeah, if someone can help me out, because I'm looking at the document here and it says area outside specific permit area, and evidently that, the document that I'm looking at, or the diagram that I'm looking at, is not correct. So where is the corrected document that we can see what we'll be voting on?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Stanley.
May we also ask Planner Colleen what the implications are of his observation?
I don't know if I understood that. Go ahead, Mr. Lloyd.
I believe that the applicant, Mr. Wilson, had a graphic that was demonstrated that area where they're limiting the commercial use. Is that correct, Mr. Wilson?
Yes,
There it
in
is.
fact, I just
My-
put it up on my screen. Yeah.
My-
I should apologize. I thought I provided this to Dan, but if I did, I failed to highlight the significance of the change. But we have a graphic, we have an engineered diagram from Odyssey Engineering that clearly delineates this. It will, act as part of the engineering documents for this application. We're happy to provide that.
Yes, if you can provide that to Mr. Kalan, and then if we can add that into the action order, so it's very clear in the action where that delineating line is. I think that should suffice.
Again, Brad Stanley.
Go ahead,
My
Mr.
question was, does the change in Mr. Killeen's analysis, is there a change, would it change anything by having the new area being defined? And it was well defined by Mr. Wilson. But does that change Mr. Killeen's analysis or any of the findings or any of his conditions?
It would change, Dan Klon, for the record, it would change one of the conditions where it specifically prohibits the use of structures for commercial uses outside of the area designated. And I highlight that smaller area as the area that has been excluded from the commercial use.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Kalan, for my own edification, if we approve it with the change or the recommendation by Mr. Wilson, it would allow for those buildings, is that correct?
The buildings would be allowed one way or the other. They would be residential. They would not need to meet commercial standards, which is the reason for it. What this changes is the point where commercial activities are prohibited within the parcel. So the line now delineates a larger area that is outside of commercial use standards.
So the bottom line is it would be restricting the area for the commercial use of what this SUP is about.
Correct.
All right. Okay, I can live with that.
I'm ready to make a motion then.
Thank you, Ms. Hill. Go ahead.
Stop me if you think I'm wrong. I move that after given reasoned consideration to the information contained in the staff report and the information received during the public hearing, the Washoe County Board of Adjustment approve with the attached conditions, special use permit case number WSUP 190027, including providing a total of 9 parking spaces, as well as additional porta potties during peak times, as well as the area of commercial under the SUP is smaller than represented in the staff report. For William and Onaj Ash for the following requests: a major grading permit, establishment of a commercial stables use type, and 3 requests to vary standards as recommended to the conditions of approval in Exhibit A, having made all 5 findings in accordance with Washoe County Code Section 110.810.30, including consistency, improvements, site suitability, issuance not detrimental, and effect on a military installation.
Thank you, Ms. Hill. Before I ask for a second, I just want to make sure that Washoe County staff, Mr. Lloyd, will that work? Are you clear on that motion also?
I believe it was a bit of a departure from the original motion, but yes, we do have that on record. I'm looking at legal staff. I don't see any issue with legal. It's fine with planning.
Mr. Chairman.
George, anything you wish to add?
No, I think the essence of the motion is exactly what, it's in the minutes, and it will be reflected in terms of what the board is deciding at this point.
Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate that. Is there a second?
There's a second. This is Brad.
Thank you, Mr. Stanley. All in favor? Aye. Mr. Stanley, we need to hear from you to have a quorum.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries unanimously. Next item. Next item on the agenda is special use permit case number WSUP 20-0009, Connect Neighborhood Center. Mr. Bronstick and Mr. Kalan, you two are up. And yes, we have Mr. Lawrence coming back in to join us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. You may proceed then.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon. Chris Bronzick, Washoe County Planning. We're looking at Connect Neighborhood Center and Garden, which is WSUP 20-9. So the applicant is requesting to approve a neighborhood commercial center consisting of roughly 16,000 square feet. And it will include convenience retail, personal services use types, and office space. This site has had 2 previous special use permits associated with it. One was submitted on June 13th, 2014, and the other was submitted on October 15th, 2018. The first was approved by Washoe County, and the second was withdrawn before a public hearing could take place. Additionally, this use will include community gardens, as well as meeting space. The proposed hours that the applicant has presented to staff will be 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. on weekdays and 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. on weekends. I provided a vicinity map for you. This location is an interesting location as it is sandwiched between 3 different schools. To the east, you have the newly constructed middle school. To the west, you have Hunsberger Elementary School, and to the north, you have Sage Ridge, which is a private school. So it's a very unique and very constrained property. So one thing about this property that I should touch up on is the master plan designation for this property is suburban residential. And one of the things that suburban residential touches up on is that it will allow for supporting neighborhood scale commercial use types and mixed use village centers if allowed by the approval of a discretionary permit, which is the special use permit. Additionally, the regulatory zone of this site is low density suburban. And within section 106 of the Washoe County Development Code, it does state that small neighborhood commercial uses may be permitted when they serve the needs of residents and when they are compatible with the residential character of the area. So that is why we're here today with the special use permit in front of you. Additionally, the applicant is requesting some modifications, and section 810-20E allows for the Board of Adjustment to vary standards within the approval process. I provided a rough site plan that was submitted as part of the application. Currently, as it is shown, it is on 2 parcels. The applicant has stated that they will complete a reversion to acreage prior to submitting any building permits. This is also reflected as a condition of approval within our within Exhibit A. So as mentioned, the applicant is requesting a modification. They are requesting to reduce parking from the required 64 spaces to 48 total spaces. Additionally, they are requesting to reduce loading spaces from the required 5 to 1 space. The applicant has submitted a parking study that has showed the off-street required parkings for both a community center and a shopping center within the ITE totaled to only 33 parking spaces. Staff is in support of the requested modification. Additionally, the application does include grading as part of their special use permit. However, due to the nature of what is being proposed, it doesn't trigger major grading. They are looking at 2,700 cubic yards of excavation and 1,200 cubic yards to be exported. Total disturbance is 65,000 square feet. However, almost all of the disturbed areas will be covered by buildings, pavement, parking, and ornamental landscaping, which is exempt from Article 438 requirements. Before we go to the public notice section, there is one segment that I wanted to discuss further, and it's with the proposed lighting. So the applicant did submit a lighting plan as part of this application. And in that lighting plan, they showed 10 light posts that were 28 feet tall. Washoe County Development Code section 110-414-21 states that light poles cannot exceed 12 feet in total height if within 100 feet of residentially zoned properties. This is important because while their adjacent properties are schools, the regulatory zone for the elementary school, the private school, and the middle school are all low-density suburban, which is residential in nature. So they will have to adhere to this requirement, and this requirement is reflected in Exhibit A of the conditions of approval. With that being said, public notice was sent to parcels within 1,000 feet from the site. 47 notices were sent. This was heard at the Southwest Truckee Meadows Washoe Valley CAB on the regularly scheduled June 11th meeting, and there were concerns related to traffic and signage. However, this was unanimously recommended for approval by the Citizen Advisory Board. Additionally, throughout this process, we have received a number of phone calls from the public and emails from the public that were in support of this proposed project. The required findings for a special use permit are consistency improvements, site suitability, and issuance not detrimental. Staff is able to make all the required findings as detailed in the staff report, and we are recommending approval with conditions. I have provided a possible motion above, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff?
Yeah, I have a question. So this community, tell me a little bit about the gardens, Chris. What is that going to be like? Is that going to be growing vegetables? Are they kids going to go there and have their own plots, or what's up with that?
Thank you. Based off of the information that was provided to me, and the applicants are present, so if I get this wrong, please do jump in. But my understanding is they're going to have community gardens and Zen gardens. So the approach of this Connect Neighborhood Center is this holistic health and well-being center. And part of that is having those Zen gardens and those community gardens, which will be along the lines of vegetables and fruits being planted within there. These community gardens, at least from my understanding, while they're classified as community gardens, they're really more focused on the individuals being present at this neighborhood center, and less so for the overall general public.
Because, you know, we have demonstration gardens at Sierra Nevada College, or you get to get groups of gardeners together and explain how to grow lettuce and, you know, celery or whatever. And it's kind of a class-oriented operation. Is that what this is going to be as well? Is this going to attract people to the site for the purpose of learning how to garden?
I don't have the answer to that question, but Heather can hopefully answer that for you.
Hi, I'm Heather Haslam, and we'll dig into the gardens during our presentation as well. But yes, it is our hope to actually have these gardens be teaching gardens, as you're talking about, Christina, and be a demonstration garden for community members to understand how to grow fruits and vegetables and be connected to your food.
Thank you.
Chris, I have a question for you. The two prior SUPs, what were they for? Do you have that information?
Yes, I do. So the first one was for a neighborhood center as well. However, the proposed uses as part of that neighborhood center were potentially more, well, no, they were certainly more intense. There were coffee shops and liquor shops that were being proposed in that utilization. The second SUP that came in, which was withdrawn, was for a very similar use type. And this one that is currently before you is very specific. And it should be noted that for something like a Starbucks to come through, or a liquor store or something of that nature, they would have to go through a special use permit for themselves to get that type of use, and potentially even have to go through a rezone and master plan amendment. So this, the proposed project is very specific.
But according to a neighborhood center as the definition, it does allow for food and drug and sundries and that. Is that correct? So they
That is correct.
So
but
they
it's-
could actually, that could allow for that to come into that facility, in addition to the personal services.
That is correct, but only to a limited extent. So part of this project, and we outlined it within the staff report, is a neighborhood center has to have a element of mixture. So they can't have 100% of personal services or 100% of convenience retail. So while, yes, they can have certain elements of convenience retail, and that is part of this application process. That is what they are asking for as part of this neighborhood center. It's not something that is going to be large scale in nature or as intense as the previous uses or special use permits that came in.
Okay.
Chris, this is Brad Stanley. There was a mention of asking the Washoe County School District for additional parking, which I think was denied. Can you speak to us a bit about parking?
Yes, so we did reach out directly to Teresa Golden with Washoe County, and the original thought process was due to the traffic studies that we originally received, which were based off of an ITE label that was not readily approved within that LDS, the low density suburban regulatory zone. We pushed it back to the applicant to modify their request and update their traffic study. But originally, we went through the process of thinking about a reciprocal parking agreement with Washoe County School District or with Sage Ridge Elementary, which is the private school to the north. Washoe County School District shut that idea down, and we consulted with Washoe County Engineering when we received new information. Based off of the information that we received based off the ITE, it reflected a 33 parking space requirement. They were showing 48 spaces, and the required within our code is 64 spaces. Due to that, the studies and information that we received, with the understanding that a more intense commercial use type would have to go through a revamped special use permit process or that master plan amendment, we supported their request to modify the parking.
And follow up to that, Chris, was that the only input that Washoe County School District was asked for or gave?
I believe what you were asking is, hopefully you can clarify, but was that the only thing that Washoe County School Districts provided input on?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, that was the only thing that they provided input on that they could readily request, deny, or approve. They did talk to our engineering department about a crosswalk with signals. However, when our engineering department went out there, they already saw that existing. So at that point, the school district did not provide any significant conditions beyond just those comments.
Thank you.
Chris, I have a question for you. On page 8 of the document here, it talks about the traffic flow and access. And I highlighted where it says, based on anticipated traffic numbers, no traffic improvement will be required for Arrow Creek Boulevard or Crossbow Court. Is that predicated upon the number of traffic for this facility? Is that what they're looking at?
Sorry about that. I was pulling up page 8 for myself.
Okay.
So it is. It's based off of the numbers generated from this individual use. Once it goes up to a certain average peak daily peak trip, so the 80 peak trips, then it would trigger that traffic report, which would indicate what upgrades or improvements are necessary.
Okay, and I guess here's where I get a little stuck. They do a traffic study specific to this facility. But like you gave in your earlier account, you have 3 schools that are all exiting onto Crossbow. And Crossbow is not a through street. So you're gonna have all 3 schools with buses and drop off coming right into that area and then trying to get back out onto Arrow Creek. And looking further at some of these peak times, it says the peak hours are anticipated to be between 8 and 10 and 3 to 6. And that, again, corresponds with all the schools letting out or dropping off in the morning. So I call into question the validity of that it won't have any type of traffic impact at that location. Even if you go down to 33 parking spots and staff that's there. I don't know, can you help me through that? Is there anything you can?
If I can, if
Or
there's
Mr.
something that I
Lloyd
can.
can see something that can clarify that for me?
And again, neither myself nor Dan or Chris, we're not the traffic experts in this regard. I do know for a fact that the peak hours are certainly staggered between the elementary school and the middle school. So there is not that conflict. Oftentimes, we see middle schools and elementary schools next to each other, and for that reason, they have very staggered hours of morning and afternoon drop-offs. I'm not familiar with the hours with the Sage Ridge, but typically what they look at are the current level of service traffic volumes on the site and whether or not there are warrants to trigger the required or necessary improvements. And I don't believe, based on the volumes, based on the traffic study, that there was the warrants necessary to trigger the improvements for any additional traffic improvements on that site. But if Chris has anything to add, I'll let him weigh in.
But for my own edification, it's predicated upon the use at that facility alone. That's what those numbers are based on.
Well, it's based on traffic volumes on the site. I mean, obviously, if the traffic volumes and that intersection are coming in at a failing grade for the level of service, then there's going to be a need for necessary improvements at that site. So they do take into consideration existing traffic volumes as well as the proposed traffic generated with this facility.
Okay. And I know it's right outside the gate of Arrow Creek, and I know people will be trying to either go home or leave in the morning right outside that gate. So just a question I have. Okay, I don't have any further questions for staff. Anybody else?
Mr. Chair?
Yes,
Brad
Mr. Stanley.
Am I being heard?
Yes.
All right, I have an additional question along the line of traffic. I know, as we all can recall, when the last school went in, there was a great deal of controversy about traffic in general, but in emergency timelies, it turns out, was our last fire Tuesday. Emergency lanes, and I think Crossbrook was one of those. Crossbrook, excuse me, one of the streets considered for emergency use. The questions for Chris: what ramifications or what impact on the emergency roads will this new closed business have, and was that looked at in your study?
Okay. Chris Bronzik, Washoe County Planning. I'm going to reiterate what I think was said just so you can clarify. But I believe what you were asking is what ramifications or impacts that this potential use would have on the emergency vehicle access, and if it was
correct.
Correct. There really shouldn't be any impacts. So Washoe County Engineering, Truckee Meadows Fire, we also sent this to the Sheriff's Department for review. And some of the conditions that came back within Exhibit A from engineering specifically prohibit any sort of parking along Crossbow Court. They have indicated no parking signs and striping as well. No parking elements associated with Crossbow Court. So with that alone, there shouldn't be any true impacts that would potentially prohibit emergency vehicle access or anything of the like. But that was taken into consideration when we were reviewing this, and engineering took that into consideration as well.
Thank you. And one last question, and perhaps this is for the applicant. Is the target market for this business the students that are going to school?
I'm happy to answer that if appropriate. So Heather Haslam again, and yes, the target market for the audience for this neighborhood center is the community surrounding the center, which we are looking at a whole family approach. So having programs for children as well as adults, grandparents, et cetera. So really a lifespan approach to our programming so that we are serving the neighborhood that we are hoping to build this in. Does that answer your question?
It helps. Thank you very much. Could you also explain to me what professional services might encompass?
Sure, I'm happy to. So those professional services in the proposed building, there will be a meditation studio, a mind-body movement studio, which is yoga, qigong, etc. We plan to have health coaches in support of behavior change. So the center is to help support health and well-being of the members who are attending it. And so a personal service would be a health coach as an example to help support behavior change.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, are there any additional questions for staff on this item? Hearing none.
No.
Thank you. Hearing none, is the applicant present and wish to speak on this?
Yes, we're here.
Go ahead. Is there anything you'd like to address with the,
Yes.
the board?
We have a presentation prepared. So Heather, why don't you kick us off?
Wonderful. Thanks, Carrie. So thank you for your time today. I'm happy to be here to introduce you to our project, our proposed project. So just a little bit about myself and my business partner who is streaming with us today but isn't here with us. So I'm a native Nevadan, and I have spent the last 10 years designing and creating wellness programming within higher education, primarily for the older adult population. And then my business partner, Jen Hutter, has lived in the Reno area for the last 10 years, and she has spent the last 20 years in the real estate equity space, advising real estate managers on raising capital globally. She's an entrepreneur and has a great deal of passion for holistic health and wellness. And really, we are here today because we are committed to enhancing the health and well-being of our neighborhood and beyond. As I'm sure that you are all aware, our long-term health is affected by the choices that we make every day, which is why we are dedicated to offering an integrative approach to health and well-being that focuses on supporting behavior change for healthy lifestyle behaviors. And we intend to do that through a neighborhood center. The property will serve as the physical center of our company, and then we will also serve the larger community and national community through a digital platform that includes a virtual studio and digital library that will serve our larger membership. Carrie, next slide. Thank you. The center is a modern-day neighborhood facility that will offer evidence-based practices, including meditation, mindful movement, such as yoga, qigong, tai chi, a functional fitness studio, which essentially is strength training and mobility training, wellness training, which will include topics such as healthy relationships, sleep hygiene, purpose in life, stress management, and then a major focus of our programming will also include nutrition. By offering this programming for all ages, we really aim to enhance the health of our community. Next slide. Here are some key details about the property and our proposed hours. And as noted, some of our peak hours are during those same times as pick up and drop off for the schools. As was mentioned, we've met with Washoe County School District, and it is our intention to design our programming around when the members are actually utilizing it, which would be during pickup and drop off. And really with the flow of traffic, we see the center as being a way to help divert traffic as we're hoping to catch some of those people who are already in the area. Next slide.
Hi, I'm Carrie Rohrmeyer. For the record, I've been helping the two property owners or the business owners with their planning component. And I just want to recap some of the things. The presentation by staff was very good, and Washoe County has been tremendously helpful through this process because we are trying to do something different. This isn't the neighborhood center that you might be familiar with of the past or what you probably frequently see on the built environment. This is different in that it's a different approach. It's really meant to be site specific to this location. It's two parcels, which we will be putting through reversion to acreage into one project site. Here's what the existing conditions look like on the right, but also an aerial view on the left. It's sited between 3 schools and a park. So while it has a suburban residential master plan designation, the use itself is a much than sort of your quintessential suburban residential housing development. It sits on a main arterial, which is Arrow Creek, but all access will be off Crossbow Court. So we actually went through a number of meetings with staff prior to even submitting our application, kind of working through what's the appropriate mix, because a mix is really the key here. It's not any dominant one use. So we're looking at convenience, the retail, we're looking at some takeaway food. We're looking at those personal services that Heather went through, and not just immediately serving the neighborhood, but the larger Truckee Meadows community with a value-based mission for wellness at all ages. Tectonics Design Group is the civil engineer and the architectural design for this project. Here's the concept that has been chosen. The building will be reminiscent of this. This is actually built elsewhere. You can see it's a modern or a contemporary design. It's no than 33 feet at its highest point. And really the use of the glass and the steel is going to capitalize on those beautiful city views and also the views of nature and Mount Rose. So we think it's going to be a nice addition to that location. The community gardens are another key aspect of this project, and that have been brought up in the staff questions. There are active and passive landscape spaces here. The passive spaces serving the meditation and mindfulness needs, but also the community garden. This center is not limited to just those who are members, but really the community itself. There will be vegetables, there will be trainings and class-based demonstrations that are meant to engage children in healthy eating, but also just good zero-scape practices here for Northern Nevada's dry climate. Here's the floor plan. It's got a first level where most of the activities are taking places. You're seeing the different studios. Some of the studios are designated for use by children. And really, the center here is meant to work with the schools. In fact, some work is already being done with Huntsberger Elementary to teach and train on mindfulness and to give those children some healthy after-school options, especially with the demonstration kitchen, training on that farm-to-table importance of growing your own food and making healthy snacks as a good option to maybe your typical after-school care. There's some convenience retail, there's some grab and go food for takeaway, there's seating area for coffee and tea. There will be some community lectures and demonstrations in terms of many aspects of healthy and wellness lifestyle. And then there's a corporate training for smaller groups. And all of these things will be staggered based on timing and needs. This is going to be worked out as the business model and as understanding the neighborhood takes place. And then there's a second level. There will be some co-working pods. Heather mentioned health coaching. Those are the kinds of professional interactions that would take place at the center. Here's the overall site plan. You saw a black and white version. Here's the color version. We're really proud to be bringing a lot of additional landscaping. Right now, there are no trees. This goes well above and beyond the 20% required by code, providing almost an acre of new landscaping, 65 new trees, 48 off-street parking spaces. And I want to mention Paul Zulaki is on this, this Zoom call, so he can help address some of the traffic questions, but in his analysis, not only was actually the analysis required by triggered code numbers, we knew up front that we would want to do an elevated parking and traffic study. He did go out in the field and has experience working with all of the schools surrounding the site. So we feel that we've done a good job of looking at those traffic conditions that are existing and what will be coming with this project. But with the lifestyle and wellness implications of this business, the emphasis is on pedestrian and bicycle connectivity and bringing those students in a safe way across from the existing schools and bringing them into the center for healthy after-school opportunities. There's a little blow up. You can see the active and passive spaces really creating that indoor-outdoor lifestyle that is so wonderful about the climate here in Northern Nevada. I also think it will just be aesthetically pleasing. So a real asset to the neighborhood. Here's elevations using warm wood tones, natural stones, looking to fit in with the landscape, the arid landscape in Southern Truckee Meadows, of which both of the business owners are local residents. So this is a very personal project in addition to just being a good addition to the community. These buildings are proposed to be well certified, which is above and beyond code and LID developments. So it's something that's really pushing the architecture forward. And pay attention to the south elevation. Lots of people will be seeing that, but going on Arrow Creek Parkway. We think it has some nice articulation. So a visual interest at this site. With that, I want to say that the staff report was very thorough. We concur with the recommendation for approval. All of the conditions are in line with the plans for the project and will be incorporated to the building permit stage. There was universal support from the CAB meeting. There were meetings with Washoe County School District, and actually one of the comments of the school district was they thought it was a great project. So we feel really good about this. Jen, I'll leave it to you. I'm sorry, Heather, I'll leave it to you to wrap up if you want to have any concluding remarks.
Yeah, I'll just wrap up by saying I am, as Carrie mentioned, I am a local resident, and so is Jen, and our kids attend these schools. And so we are very mindful of the traffic as we do pickup and drop-offs there as well. And so it's really our intention to really help support traffic flow rather than adding to a headache of traffic flow. So I just wanted to share that piece. And thank you for your time today.
Well, thank you. Are there any questions for either of these ladies? I do have a quick question for you. You have looking at the floor plan, you have basically I think at least 5 different rooms, 6 different rooms, one for fitness, one for meditation, one for mindfulness, one for mindful with the kids, and one for a corporate training area, and then retail. For these different rooms, how many people are you looking at would average out or be put into each one of these if, let's say, they were either for fitness or meditation or corporate training?
So great question. The average in each room would be somewhere between 10 to 15 people in each room. Within the corporate training space, it could be up to 20 with tables and chairs. And of course would depend on physical distancing at that point, but we're looking at 10 to 15.
And would these rooms be used all the time, or would you be rotating different activities through them? How does that operate?
So they would have activities going on simultaneously. Not everyone's going to be working on the same aspect of their healthy lifestyle. And so people would be working, someone may be in a meditation class while someone else wants to work on their functional fitness. So there would be multiple classes going on at one time.
Thank you. I do applaud the whole family approach for, the health and well-being. It's nice to see out there.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Thank you very much. Madam Secretary, is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on this?
Yes, it looks like she got kicked out somehow, so she's coming back. And it looks like she has a question.
Thank you. I was not able to connect there for a while, so thank you. I don't have a comment. I think it's a great idea. It's very timely for this part of, what's going on in the world. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to disconnect, but I did, and now I am back. So thanks.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Madam Secretary, no public comment? Thank you. Okay, we'll go ahead and close public comment and bring it back to the board for discussion. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, this is Brad Stanley. I would echo Ms. Hill's remarks. This is, as Chris has said, this is the third time we've seen this piece of property. Somebody tried to do something with it. And this seems the most sensitive and, I want to say, reasonable approach to using this particular parcel that I've served. And I think it's very clever.
Thank you, Mr. Stanley. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair, I just simply agree with the other members so far to this point on the board. I'm in support of this project as well.
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. The one concern I do have is with the parking and the screening. It originally was proposed for 64 parking spaces, and I believe that was cut down to about, was it 33 or 32? And if you're going to have 10 people per activity, and you have at least 5 things going on, that would be a minimum of 50 people to exclude anyone that's coming in there to get a cup of coffee and to exclude parking for staff. So I'm not too sure I concur with the reduction that far down of the number of parking spaces.
Mr. Chair, they're asking to reduce down to 48 spaces.
Is that what I thought okay, let me go find my document here that I thought it went down to. On page 13, says modification to standards, reduced from required 64 spaces and 5 loading spaces down to 33 parking spaces and 1 loading space. Is that,
I'm looking at,
is that correct or not? Go ahead, Chris, you can clarify that for us?
Chris Bronzik, Washoe County Planning. So the 33 number is based off the justification from the ITE, based off of the uses that were within that Institute of Transportation Engineers booklet. They are proposing to go from the required 64 spaces down to 48 spaces, and the loading spaces down from 5 required to 1 space. So the total spaces they're looking at is 48, not 33.
Okay, so all right. So the 33 parking spaces and 1 loading space is not correct. According to the conditions, it would be reduced to 48 parking spaces and 1 loading space.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, that looked like a typo in the staff report.
Yeah, okay, I just, better to ask and make sure we got it right than do that. Any further questions? Again, my only concern is, like I said, I think it's a great idea. My concern is all 3 schools are going to exit onto Crossbow in addition to this. And as the applicant stated, their times are going to correspond with the school's drop-off and pickup times. But short of that, I don't know what else you would put in that space. It's a great idea, like I said, the whole family approach, but I really think that it's gonna get choked down. You know, you got 3 schools on a dead-end street in addition to this. I sometimes call into question how we get to these figures at times, but that's just me. Enough of that being said. Any other additional questions, concerns, comments from staff? With that, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion, Mr.
Thank you,
Chair.
Mr. Lawrence.
I move that after giving reasoned consideration to the information contained in the staff report and information received during the public hearing, the Washoe County Board of Adjustment approve with conditions special use permit case number WSUP 20-0009 for Sage Property Ventures LLC for 1, to establish a neighborhood center use type, and 2, to vary standards as conditioned in Exhibit A. Having made all 5 findings in accordance with Washoe County Code Section 110.810.30, those being for consistency, improvement, site suitability, issuance not detrimental, and no effect on a military institution.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Hill. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Item passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good, thank you. Good luck.
Thanks.
Okay, next item up on the agenda.
Mr. Chair, excuse me
Yes.
just one moment, please. I am going to excuse myself from the meeting. I have an appointment at 3:45, and I assume the other board members will be present for the quorum to continue.
Let me check just to make sure. Mr. Stanley and Ms. Hill, are you still going to remain to the end of the meeting?
For the sake of the quorum, yes.
Thank you. Mr. Lawrence, thank you very much. We do appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Okay, next up on the agenda is special use permit case number WSUP 20-0010, McCullen Peak Tower. And Ms. Olander, you are up.
Mr. Chair, while we're waiting for Ms. Olander, I'll go ahead and read the description.
Yes,
if that's all
please.
right.
That's fine.
All right, this is a request for possible action, hearing, and discussion to approve a special use permit for the construction of a new 195-foot self-supporting tower to house FM radio and cellular antennas on a 1.1-acre site with existing equipment on McClellan Peak. The proposal also requests varying the landscaping and parking requirements by not requiring any additional landscaping and not requiring a paved parking space. With that, I was hoping that Ms. Olander would jump on, but we may want to take...
I'm here.
Oh,
Julie
there she
Olander
is.
with Planning and Building.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you.
So I have a little presentation for you. Let's get it let's see if I can get it going.
You bet.
There we go. All right. This is a special use permit for a tower on McLean Peak. McClellan. The applicant is requesting a special use permit to construct a 190-foot self-supporting tower, which will house FM and cellular antennas on a 1-acre parcel. They are requesting to vary the landscaping and the parking so that there won't be any paved parking at the location. The tower is classified as a commercial facility, which is permitted in the GR zoning where this property is located, and however, it does require a special use permit. Here's a map showing approximately where it's located. It is a fairly remote location. This, you can see where Washoe Lake is, so it's almost in Story County. The tower will be located in an area where there are other towers, and however, the area is fairly flat at this location. It's approximately 1,000 square feet will be disturbed, and the parcels to the north, west, and east are federally owned, and then the parcel to the south is Story County. As I spoke earlier, parcel where this tower is going to be is has a regular zoning of general rural, and then the surrounding parcels are primarily open space. Tower will be 195 feet tall, and it will be a self-supporting lattice tower for FM radio and cellular antennas. The tower will be three-legged and freestanding tower, and it will not require cables to support it. The equipment will be fenced with a gate on the west side of the site. There is an older tower on the site, and they're still not sure if they're going to remove all the equipment or not, so the applicant is still looking at that. And as I said, the applicant has asked to waive the landscaping just because they're remote location, and there really isn't any irrigation at that location. There is native vegetation and there aren't any really trees, but there is native vegetation in the area. And then they're also asking to waive the paving requirements because of the remote location. Sort of an overview of what the tower will look like and where it will be. You can sort of see the fencing area here, and this is where the existing tower is, and then this is the shelter equipment where it's going to be. But this is the new tower itself, this three-legged structure. Public notice was sent. It was presented to the South Truckee Meadows Washoe Valley CAB on June 11th. And there were some different questions they asked about input from neighboring parcels, and then just asked about the other equipment in the area. But they had no objections to the tower itself. There are other agencies that reviewed the application. I believe the only other agency that had comments or conditions was the engineering department, and those are included in the conditions of approval. Staff was able to make all the 4 findings, and they are detailed in the staff report, and I provide a motion if you need one. The applicant, I believe, is available. They don't have a presentation, but they can answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you,
Yes, I see both applicants are online, so they're available.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Olander. Are there any questions for staff?
No.
Thank you. Hearing none. Is the applicant present? Would they like to speak?
I'm Terry Michaels, president of Tower Sites Incorporated, and good afternoon now all on the meeting here. I have nothing further to add. I think the staff report was quite satisfactory and very complete. I'm available to answer any questions that may be asked of.
Thank you, Mr. Michaels. I got one for you. What would be the odds of you taking down that 50-foot tower if you put up a new one?
I would do it if it's required to do so. Our thought was it might serve as a backup structure if something were happen to the larger structure at some point, or if there was additional need for some antenna on that side at that height or something like that. But like I said, I have no immediate use for it, so it wouldn't be a major issue to remove it.
Yeah, I thought the need for the new tower was because the old tower at 50 feet was no longer adequate.
Well, that's true. It's because our property is set back from the edge of what is more or less a plateau on McClellan Peak. It doesn't see over the edge very well into Carson City and that whole valley area. So it served its original purpose, but for the new purpose, the anticipated purpose, it doesn't work too well.
So is that leaning toward a commitment that you'll take it down or not?
Like I said, I had no immediate plans to do so, but if if that requirement is put upon us, we will do so.
No, I don't think I would put that upon you. It's just that if it's no longer needed, you know, it kind of keeps the area cleaner, but that's your call. That's your property. Okay.
Yeah, I understand. That's a good point.
All right, thank you. Any questions for this gentleman?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Brad Stanley, I have a question. There was a mention earlier about other towers in the area. Do you know anything about those? Could you give us any background on any of those?
This project is driven by a request from Evans Broadcasting, which is a local broadcaster based in Carson City. And they operate several FM radio stations and translators, some of which are on McClellan Peak and some of which are near Reno and at least one other location. And they had a couple of goals here. One is they're leasing space on at least one or two of the other towers on McClellan Peak, but they've had some issues with the reliability of electric power. Their current facility that's being provided to them doesn't have a backup power generator, whereas our existing facility does. And they also had a desire to consolidate their various broadcast transmitters onto one structure, whereas right now they're on several. So that is where we started on this project, and the initial basis for it. We will also make the facility available for anybody, other co-locators or wireless carriers that may come along later and want to use the facility. I think there's maybe a wireless internet provider that is also interested in this structure. They haven't made any commitments to use it yet.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, and if I could piggyback on that, McClellan Peak is one of about a dozen targeted sites throughout the county where we've identified basically targeting communication facilities. And there's a number of communication sites on McClellan Peak, and I think that was the intended purpose, to concentrate these types of facilities in a few select locations. So that's what you're seeing here tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. Are there any other questions for this gentleman? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and close that. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Madam Secretary, is there anyone from the board wishing to, I'm sorry, is there anyone from the audience or the general public wishing to speak on this matter?
No public comment.
Thank you very much. We'll bring it back to the board for discussion. Is there any discussion?
This is Brad Stanley again. It seems very straightforward and very appropriate for the location. Seems to pass Mr. Federal parcel in Stewart County. It seems like very workable use.
Thank you, Mr. Stanley, and I concur with what Mr. Lloyd said about the consolidation of the towers, whether it's on Peavine or Virginia Peak or McClellan Peak. You know, there's already towers up there, so that's a good spot for it. Before I accept a motion, though, under conditions of approval, the first paragraph does state that it was the condition approved or granted by the Board of Adjustment on July 8th. I think that should be changed to today's date of the 24th. If we can go ahead and reflect that.
You just have the old copy from when we didn't have.
I'll correct that, thank you.
It's the only one I had. Okay, I might have I might have an old copy, but I just noticed that, so I just want to make sure that we are.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Olander. All right, with that, I will entertain a motion. All right, I'll make the motion. It's all right, I'll go ahead and make this motion. Thank you, Ms. Hill. I move that after giving reasoned consideration to the information contained in the staff report and information received during the public hearing, the Washoe County Board of Adjustment approve with conditions special use permit case number WSUP 20-0010 for Tower Sites, Inc., having made all 5 findings in accordance with the Washoe County Code Section 110.810.30, that being consistency, improvements, site suitability, issuance not detrimental, and effects on a military installation. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Stanley seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Moving on. We have chair and board items. Future agenda items. Is there anything from the board on future agenda items? Hearing none. How about requests for information from staff? I actually have 2. Mr. Lloyd, I know in the past you used to update us on appeals that went up to the Board of County Commissioners. And I know we haven't heard anything back for a while, so either we're being very successful or they haven't heard any. But if you could just keep us appraised of that, if in fact something gets appealed and if we're overturned or it's in support of us, we'd appreciate that. So we have that. Thank you very much. And the other one is, and Mr. Large and Mr. Lloyd, it's for you, and it just has to do with verbiage under conditions. And it was something that I noticed as I was going through the document. What we tend to state is that the applicant or it's approved with substantial compliance. And I just don't know if there's some better verbiage out there. We've had situations in the past where individuals have elected not to comply with the application or the conditions of approval. And I don't know if there's some sort of verbiage where we might be able to put more teeth into it as to how we
Mr. Chair, could I
address
add
it.
to that? Would that also impact the verbiage to significantly detrimental in the finding? If you're talking about substantial, what's substantial, what's significant?
I think we got that, Mr. Stanley. I mean, it's just something I don't want to split hairs, and I don't want to, I don't want something to come back that it's too vague. And substantial compliance, I don't know if that means, well, if we do most of it, we're okay, and if we leave some of it out, so be it. And Mr. Large, that's toward you. If there's something we can look at, that would be appreciated. If this is the best we got, or if this will suffice, or if this is beyond our purview and it would have to go up to the Board of County Commissioners, I understand all that, so.
I don't want to get too far afield because this is not an agendized item. We have a very difficult time requiring complete compliance, with the understanding that very often, I would say 9 times out of 10, what we find when a project comes for final submittal as a building permit, there's always going to be minor changes in the elevation of a building. There's going to be just a minor change in the tweak of the layout. The design is going to be just a little bit different. So we use that substantial compliance as basically are you looking at the same set of plans? Is it going to be generally the same thing that was approved by the Board of Adjustment, with the understanding that there's going to be just minor tweaks? And so if you can come up with better language that still allows for some flexibility in terms of that minor changes, and we're all we're open to that. But for the time being, that substantial compliance, it's basically left then up to the discretion of the planners that are reviewing it. as the project professionals to make that determination. Is it, does it meet the basic approval that was granted by the BOA?
Thank you, Mr. Lloyd, and I agree with that. There are going to be some minor things, and I have no problem with those set of circumstances. It's the other end of the spectrum of where does that take us? 99.9% of the time, people comply. But when you get that 1% and they say, good enough, does that open that back door? Does that open that other door to issues? And I don't have the answer. And I don't know if there is some sort of language we can come up to, but something that would be definitive in nature that you either did comply or you failed to comply, or maybe some future verbiage that addresses things like that, where for the most part, but there's still an overriding authority that can look at this to make sure that you did. Mr. Large, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but if you have some insight, I'd appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman, we can definitely look at some language that have been used in before other boards and other ordinances, and bring that back and see if those would be more beneficial. I mean, as Mr. Lloyd said, I think the current language allows some flexibility and some objectivity, and doesn't tie our hands at the staff level to ensure that complete compliance, because sometimes that's just not possible.
Yeah, and I support that. I agree with that. Thank you. I appreciate that. Are there any more requests for information from staff?
Christina would like to speak.
Ms. Hill?
I've had several projects recently go through final inspection from TRPA, and several of them have failed the final inspection, and then they mitigate and then their outlines why they failed, and then they fix that, and then they have passed, and it says because they're in substantial compliance. But there's maybe one or two things that aren't, and that's exactly the term that TRPA uses. And if you're in substantial compliance, you can pass, but it does list where you fail to meet the highest criteria. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Also, I have another request. People from the community have contacted me regarding the Duffield project that was heard in February, and down on Ganawabi. And they have asked me how that, what happened after the Board of Adjustments denied that application for the front yard setback. And we can't find anything about what happened if they appealed it to the county commissioners, what happened. So if you could let me know, Trevor, or someone.
Well, yes.
If they appeal to the county commissioners, and on what date, so we could look at the minutes of that meeting?
Ms. Hill, it was never appealed. I believe the applicants decided to change the design so that they would, so it did not require a variance, and they're moving forward with simply a building permit.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you so much. We were just wondering how that's moving forward. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the clarification on it, Mr. Lloyd. Any other requests for information from staff?
No.
Thank you. Hearing none, Director and Legal Counsel items. First up is report on previous Board of Adjustment items. Mr. Lloyd.
Yes, I would like to report on a particular item. On June 23rd, the County Commission heard the appeal of special use permit 190006. This was a cell site and incline, and they did overturn the decision of the Board of Adjustment.
For approval or denial?
I'm sorry, this one, it was denied by the Board of Adjustment, and it was overturned and approved by the County Commission on that date.
Okay.
And that's the only one I have to report on.
What project was that?
That was the That was the Verizon wireless cell site off of, by Tunnel Creek. That
Yeah, that was the parking area one?
Oh, no.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you. Any other?
If I may, and I do apologize for this, staff has been pursuing the vacancy on the Board of Adjustment, and I do apologize, we've hit a little bit of a snag. We hope to fill that vacancy very quickly.
Hopefully by our next meeting, or quickly?
Quickly.
Quickly, thank you. I appreciate that. Legal information and updates, Mr. Large.
Nothing from legal.
Thank you, sir. General public comment and discussion. Madam Secretary, is there anyone anyone from the public wishing to speak at this time? I'll take that as a
No public comment.
Thank you kindly. With that, we're adjourned.